Who am I?
The most absurd question in human history. Who am I? But what if I told you every single man on this planet at some point in his life has had the same answer to that question? I don't have a study or a survey to back this up. It's just one of those things which you know. The way you know that a chai tastes better than a continuous. The way you know that your wife isn't fine when she says she's fine. These are some of the things which don't need data. They just need honesty. And this time it says that every single man shares a very unhealthy amount of obsession with Batman. Every single one of us, at least once in their life, has stood in front of the mirror and whispered those three magical words.
Yeah. I'm Batman.
Some of us did it as kids and laughed. Some of us did it last week and did.
Well, if a guy dresses up like a bat clearly has issues.
And imagine impersonating someone who's already impersonating. A man pretending to be a man, pretending to be a bat. Now, if this doesn't tell you something about the male conditioning, nothing will. And yet, it's also a fact that for something to turn into an obsession, it needs to stay with you. Not for a week, but years. Maybe even since childhood. But the thing is that Batman was never the clear winner when we were kids. There was competition. There was Spider-Man, the next door cool superhero with some great superpowers. In fact, there was Superman. He could fly. He was a god. But there were plenty. I remember fighting about it as kids that who would beat who was the most powerful. But I don't think we knew what we were arguing about. Because soon enough, with time and some life, and without anyone announcing, Batman became the superhero. Not because he miraculously gained some powers, but I think it's because we started understanding him. His brokenness became the most honest kind of strength that we had ever seen. And the thing is that at 10, you like him because of his car. At 15, you like him because he's dark and angry. And at 15, that exactly feels right. At 20, you like him because he's no powers and still shows up. And at 30, you like him because he's broken and functioning anyway. And that's also the most honest description of yours during your morning commute. But the question still remains, why? Why does a billionaire in a bat costume speak to a man whose salary leaves before he does? A man whose entire financial life is just debt introducing itself to more debt. Why does Batman speak to him? Maybe because there's something fundamentally off, something deeply flawed with how the entire species of men was assembled.
Be curious, not judgmental. I like that.
What if I say, man is the simplest complicated being alive? The only creature on earth who can build a rocket and not know how to say, I'm not okay. A wild animal in a formal shirt, tamed not by a master but by himself. And he did such a thorough job of it that he forgot he was ever wild. Director David Fincher said, "We are designed to be hunters. And we are in a society of shopping. There's nothing to kill anymore. There's nothing to fight, nothing to overcome, nothing to explore. In that societal emasculation, this everyman is created. And that's why I say, man, in his natural form, was a simple creature. His reward was immediate and physical. Food on the ground, safety at night, sleep under the sky that remained unlit. There was no performance review for this version of a man. No LinkedIn. No suddenly signing up for guitar classes and a pottery workshop at 32 just because he read somewhere that hobbies give you an identity. And then society developed. The industrial revolution came, the tech revolution came. Each one of them needed a very specific kind of a man. And a man, in his truest form, did not fit the bill. Hence, all the training.
Because I want to fit in.
And this led to the birth of conformity. Conformity means compliance with standards, rules, or laws. A framework to govern behavior in accordance with socially accepted conventions. And this is exactly what happened. Boys were taken in to be trained the kind of men that the society needed out of them at that moment. Not the kind of men that they were, but the kind of men that the world required. In the 7th century BC, the Spartans had a system called the agoge. Boys were taken from their families at the age of 7, placed into herds like cattle, given one piece of clothing for every season, every weather. They were deliberately starved, encouraged to steal food to survive, but beaten if caught. Not for stealing, but for being caught. The lesson was survive, but never let anyone see how. In fact, there was even a ritual at the temple of Artemis where boys were publicly flogged. The ones who cried out were considered weak. Some of them even died during the ritual. They were 7 years old and were being trained not to be boys or humans, but men who could function. But here's the part that nobody tells you. The rigidity and training which made Sparta invincible actually destroyed it. There did come a day when Thebes defeated Spartans at the Battle of Leuctra, and it was because they were smart enough to use some creative maneuvers, whereas Spartans, on the other hand, they were too inflexible to encounter it. The training which they thought made them unbeatable actually made them incapable of adapting when the rules changed. The system that built them to be indestructible is actually what made them brittle. But a lot has changed since then. The world has evolved, and so has the training, and also the kind of man that's needed. What hasn't changed is the fact that the training just doesn't take away the boy in order to produce a man. It takes his identity, his ability to express. It takes away the most fundamental thing that separates a living being from a machine, his right to feel and ability to communicate exactly what he's feeling.
I lost something I couldn't live without. My identity.
You see, the fight for women has been about expanding what they're allowed to do. But the crisis of men has been about recovering what they're allowed to feel. And the most devastating thing to come out of it is that soon enough, the boys themselves start training each other to stop being a human being. It's the most efficient system that was ever designed. Because the prisoners themselves run the prison. This leads to development of something called normal male alexithymia. In Greek, it means no words for emotions. And in normal human English, NMA is a subclinical, widespread condition where men experience difficulty identifying and describing emotions, largely due to traditional socialization that discourages emotional expression. If you ask me, I don't think it's a disorder. It's a training outcome. The man was never broken, but he was trained to be built this way, on purpose. I might not have the data to prove this, but it's just something that I feel that almost 100% of men carry this. I don't think that a man can ever truly be himself. And if your partner, brother, or friend ever denies it, let them. That denial is a training talking. Every man's first love is not a person, it's a mask, an alter ego. In 1972, a man named Edmund Muskie was the frontrunner for the American presidency. 6'4", a senator, even compared to Lincoln. He was the man everyone expected to beat Nixon. Then a newspaper attacked his biasness towards Americans of French-Canadian descent and his wife as well. They called her unladylike. Muskie stood on a flatbed truck in a snowstorm and called the publishers a gutless coward. But at that moment, his voice cracked. His shoulders heaved, and the Washington Post reported with tears streaming down his face. Muskie insisted for the rest of his life that it was melting snow, not tears. But it didn't matter. The image of a man showing emotions in public destroyed his campaign. Voters questioned whether he had the strength to run the nation. The entire incident, it was later revealed, was engineered by Nixon's team. A planted story designed to provoke an emotional response. They knew that if they could make a man cry or even look it like he cried, his career was over. A man defended his wife's honor, and it cost him the presidency. A man breathed his last defending the claim that he didn't cry. That was 1972. Since then, nothing fundamentally has changed. Only got it worse.
Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club.
A child walks into this world thinking that he's someone, that his existence has a purpose, or even worse, that is unique, special in his own ways. But then somewhere between Boys Don't Cry and Man Up, this child is quietly replaced by something that is socially acceptable. He's taught to express, even act and react, but within its bounds. And so he does that. He does that with whatever that's allowed. A haircut, expensive suits, accessories, a car he's still paying off, an Instagram bio that says, living my best life. But the thing is, you can't say what you feel, so you buy what you feel. You wear what you feel, you drive what you feel. The entire economy of men's lifestyle is built on one simple fact. Men were never taught to open their mouths, so they opened their wallets instead. And even that is not enough, because the moment you think that you haven't just fitted in, you have nailed it, someone pulls out a better card.
New card. What do you think?
Whoa, very nice. Look at that.
Picked them up from the printers yesterday.
Good coloring.
That's bone. And the lettering is something called Cillian Braille.
It's very cool, Bateman, but that's nothing. Look at this. That is really nice. Eggshell with Romalian type. What do you think?
Nice.
The world inside you might be on fire, but the manual says the only acceptable response is
Control. Control, Uday.
and it works. It works well until one day it doesn't.
Because it's not just about the pleasures of conformity and the importance of trends, it's also a personal statement about the band itself. Hey, Paul! Ah!
the first year of my college, there were 5 suicides. All 5 were boys. One of them was from my hostel. And it happened on the day of Holi. The celebration stopped until noon, after which the usual procedure happened. The body went one way, the rest of us went another. The college launched a program, "Are you okay?" Everyone was supposed to ask everyone around them if they are okay. So we did. And surprisingly, we found out that everyone was fine. Everyone was always fine. Every single person we asked replied the same thing. All good. But it only reveals a pattern. Robin Williams, Chester Bennington, Anthony Bourdain. 3 men who made the entire world laugh, sing and travel. 3 men who seemed to have everything. 3 men who, when asked how they were doing, probably said the same 2 words every man says. All good.
My mockingbird can't bring you down, can't let you go, so I'll just let the sun glow.
But when has it never been? The world inside might be collapsing, but a man will rarely say anything else other than all good. The problem wasn't that nobody asked. The problem was that we were trained only to give one response, always the same thing, always all good. In fact, a man's life passes by saying it again and again until one day it hasn't. And by then he has said it so many times that nobody believes the silence when it finally comes. And just like that, the funniest man of this generation couldn't find the one thing he gave everyone else. The man who sang about being numb actually was. The man who showed us the world couldn't find a reason to stay. Anthony Bourdain's last show was called Parts Unknown. The sad irony is, the most unknown parts were the ones he carried inside. And so these characters, the one with alter egos, the mask and the second selves, they became a Sahara. There was relatability in these characters trying to express what they truly want to be but cannot. However, it didn't fix anything, but it made the weight bearable. And that's how Tyler Durden, Patrick Bateman, Walter White, Peter Parker and Bruce Wayne became every man's literally me. But this only proves the pull towards the alter ego, towards the mask. What makes Batman special? The reason is simple. It's not who Batman is, it's what he means. In 1939, a shy, bookish man from the Bronx sat in a room with his friend and created the most iconic character in the history of comics. His name was Bill Finger. And yet, it's Bob Kane whose tombstone reads, Bob Kane, Bruce Wayne, Batman. They are one and the same. This story is important.
Shouldn't the people know the hero who saved them?
Hero can be anyone, even a man doing something as simple and reassuring as putting a coat around a young boy's shoulders to let him know the world hadn't ended.
It was Bill who designed the top costume. He added the cape. Before him, Batman was just someone standing in bright red tights with fins under his arms. Bill added the cowl. He created Bruce Wayne, wrote the origin story. Gotham City was his creation, named after a jewelry store he passed on the bus. In fact, he created Robin, the Joker, Two-Faced, Catwoman, Commissioner Gordon, everyone. And then Bob Kane, who came up with the initial idea of a Bat-themed character, negotiated a contract with DC Comics that gave him the sole credit forever. Bill became the ghostwriter. He carried a scrapbook full of weird facts and clipping notes. Bill rode the bus for hours, staring at New York, which became Gotham. He was quite brilliant and completely incapable of selling himself. He was the common man, being crushed by the conformity of what being a successful man meant. Kane, on the other hand, loved the spotlight, expensive suits, even had an autobiography to his name. He passed off other artists' painting as his own. And when anyone would ask who created Batman, Kane would say, me. Bill wrote hundreds of Batman stories, but in his lifetime, he's credited with two episodes of the 1966 Batman TV show. That's it. In fact, in 1968, Bill was fired from DC Comics. His crime was that he asked if the company would provide health care for its employees. It took until 2015, 41 years after Finger's death, for DC to add his name, Batman, by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. The words back then went and or by with. Bill died in 1974, alone and in poverty. The man who built the most profitable fictional character in history passed away and no one knew, no one came. The pattern held. It was Bill who lived Batman's life.
No one's ever gonna know who saved an entire city.
Right now. It was the Batman.
You see, life is meaningless, but worth living, provided you recognize its meaninglessness. And that's also how a man convinces himself of the absurdity of his own life. But the realization that life is absurd cannot be an end, but only a beginning, because now you have identified the problem that needs to be tackled. And in order to survive that absurdity, a man develops an obsession with a purpose, with meaning, with the idea that suffering has to mean something. Because if it doesn't, it's just suffering. And just suffering is unbearable.
What are you seeking? I seek the means to fight injustice.
And that's why having a purpose and identity attached to it, it helps. It gives a reason to the suffering. And sometimes that's more than what anyone could ask for. In fact, it's true that the whole work of a man seems to consist in nothing but proving to himself every minute that he's a man and not a piano key. With time, this fire only intensifies. And all that a man wants in that moment is an absolute free choice. However dear that freedom may cost him or wherever it may lead. Bill and Batman, they lived every single word of it. They lived the life of the good men, the one written about from the underground. Here's the problem with everything we just discussed. It sounds too perfect to exist. Something only meant for theory, which one only understands after taking a shot at it. And Batman was no different. He was and is the most practical superhero who also started his journey like any other man, as an optimist who thought he could do anything.
Know your limits, Mastermind.
Batman has no limits.
But life has a way of humbling such people. You start thinking that the world is yours, and then, exactly then, the world introduces you to yourself. The real one, the good, the bad, the parts you buried so deep you forgot that they were there. Some call it the shadow, the unconscious, repressed, hidden and disowned parts of the personality that the conscious mind refuses to claim as its own. Batman had a journey of himself with his shadow. Before he became the Dark Knight, he was a boy terrified of bats, of the dark, of the alley where he led his parents to die. His purpose was born in that alley, but so was his shadow. And every man's purpose and shadow run into each other eventually. And in that collision comes a truth no one prepared him for. That is, he's not just limited by the world outside, he's also limited by the world inside. The fear he never named, the rage he swallowed so often that it started to feel like personality. These emotions never left, they just learned to run things from the basement.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally? You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it.
And the shadow? The shadow does not leave just because you found a purpose. It follows you into every single fight until one day.
I wanted to save Gotham. I failed.
What happens in that fall is that a man feels deeply victimized. And believe me when I say that I don't think anyone ever feels as victimized as a man. Because he was trained, he was told that failing was never an option. And now this trauma of victimization, it can be diluted. It can be diluted by communication, by expression. But these are the concepts which men were never privy to. So a man channels that entire energy elsewhere.
I'm vengeance.
People like Bill and Batman, they used it to do something rare. They accepted the shadows. They looked at everything that they are, the fear, the rage, the basement, and instead of running, they walked towards it. They showed that it's okay. It's okay to be scared and doubtful because it's just something that you live through.
All creatures feel fear.
Even the scary ones.
Especially the scary ones.
In fact, at times, this fear is even necessary.
You do not fear death. You think this makes you strong. It makes you weak. How can you move faster than possible? Fight longer than possible? Without the most powerful impulse of the spirit. The fear of death.
My bets, Mastermind.
That's frightened me. This time my enemies shared my dread.
And the best card that Bill ever played, he made Batman interesting not because of what he could do, but because of what he couldn't. Superheroes, they sell you a lie. That in order to fulfill your purpose, you need to be chosen. By this universe, by God, or maybe by a radioactive spider. But most of us, we were never chosen for anything. Not even a school cricket team. And that is why fault is more interesting to us than powers. Because we know we'll never have powers, but faults, we have plenty. But Batman teaches something that the rest of them don't.
What you really fear is inside yourself. You fear your own power. You fear your anger. The drive to do great, terrible things.
In fact, it doesn't matter how many faults you have. Because you get what you want, not because of the powers that you have or who you are. It's because of how badly you want it. And if one dares enough, believes enough, at times...
Tell me. Do you bleed? You will.
Oh, that sounds incredible. And in a theatre with Hans Zimmer playing, it might even feel true. But we don't live in a theatre. And in reality...
It's not about what I want. It's about what's fair!
You only fight when the fight is fair, when you have a chance of winning. You only fight when the fight is fair. When the fight is not fair, you fuck off from there.
Hence, in reality, the more practical men, people like me, if standing in the same situation, we'll choose differently. We won't charge, we'll calculate, we'll ask, can I afford this? And most of the days, the answer is no. We live for another day, we clock in, we smile, we say all good, the usual stuff. But we don't forget. In fact, I think it's not the elephant, but men who have the sharpest memory on the planet. We just pretend otherwise. And I say so because the dare in us, it doesn't die. It just goes quiet. It sits inside at a stage where it is still faith, a belief without evidence. And until there's evidence, it stays there, throbbing, waiting for its chance. And it is this quiet sense of being wronged, of being owed something by life, is that keeps this faith breathing. And there comes a time when a man is rushed by this feeling. At that moment, he dares to go beyond his comfort, beyond his definition of fair, beyond what the world expected of him. He somehow convinces himself,
I had to try. If someone can be saved, I have to try.
And soon enough, he goes for it. He does so with a belief because his faith finally has some evidence, and Batman is one of them. He does so because it's Batman who makes him believe.
Batman could be anybody. That was the point.
Madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push.
And Batman has been extraordinarily lucky with his villains. But the reason that makes them great is not some costumes or scheming. It's because they are ruled by the very same things that Batman struggles with every single day. It's like a man fighting with his demons. In fact, Batman sees a part of himself in every single one of them. Because at the end of the day, they were all disintegrated parts of the shadow that he had been trying very hard to hold together.
This is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
These are the men who, when life gave them the terrifying freedom to choose between good and evil, they chose evil. And they used their victimization to drive it again and again and again. They are the people who know no logic, no rules, no limits.
Well, because he thought it was good sport, because some men aren't looking for anything logical, like money. They can't be bought, bullied, reasoned, or negotiated with. Some men just want to watch the world burn.
The only thing separating Batman from them is,
without a code, I'm no better than them.
and deep down, Batman already knew that he could easily be one of them. Not because what he was doing was unsustainable, but because
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
And here we go.
People need dramatic examples to shake them out of apathy, and I can't do that as Bruce Wayne. As a man, I'm flesh and blood. I can be ignored, I can be destroyed, but as a symbol, I can be incorruptible. I can be everlasting.
What symbol?
Something elemental, something terrifying.
Consider Batman as a platonic form. Platonic forms are perfect, unchanging, and eternal abstract essences, such as beauty, justice. They exist in higher, non-physical realm, Plato argued that these are the true reality, while the physical objects, they are merely imperfect shifting shadows or copies that participate in these forms. Consider him as the Platonic form of every man's hope. The hope of, I can be anything, I can do anything. Not the reality, but the ideal, the thing you reach for in the dark. And this Platonic form, it inspires something more than greatness, something real. It teaches us that it's okay to have shadows. All you need to do is not lie about them. Lie to the world if you have to, but never to yourself. It teaches us to accept ourselves the way we are and still go after what we want.
It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
Lastly, the process will never be easy. There'll be conformity, there'll be your limitations, there'll be yourself. There'll always be something. And once in a while, either one of them or all of it combined, they are bound to make you fall. And that's okay, because
why do we fall? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
And if you think you are done, remember,
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you a stranger.
And if by some mad chance you have still managed to hold on to your purpose until the end, then hold on to it tighter, because
But if you make yourself more than just a man, if you devote yourself to an ideal, and if they can't stop you, then you become something else entirely. Which is? Legend, Mr. Wayne.
at the end of the day, man is the most hopeful being on the planet. He has to be. He has nothing else. He builds a city out of that hope, out of all the possibilities, out of every morning he showed up without knowing if it would be worth it. And it's sacred. It needs to be protected. It needs to be protected from the world and its enemies.
When their enemies were at the gates, the Romans would suspend democracy and appoint one man to protect the city. And it wasn't considered an honor, it was considered a public service.
And the one we chose was not a god, not someone with powers. It was a man, ordinary, flawed, and terrified, with a scrapbook full of notes and a bus ride that never ends. A man who was never credited, never seen, never thanked, but who showed up anyway, because
this is the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs right now. So we'll hunt him. Because he can take it. Because he's not a hero. He's a silent guardian. A watchful protector. A dark knight. I never said thank you.
So I'll just let the sun glow.
And you'll never have to.